Hello, it's Andrew back with another book review. For those of you who've seen them before, or those who haven't, I do them all in one take. There's no whizzy graphics or anything. I say too much. I just don't have a script. I just turn the webcam on and off I go. Today I'm talking about Ali Smith and the Seasonal Quartet. 4 books. First one, Autumn. Second one, Winter. Third one, Spring, which I've recently read, and the fourth one, believe it or not, it's called Summer. It's only just come out, and I haven't yet acquired that one. So what I thought I'd do is talk about the series overall, but then just focusing a bit more on the Spring book. So the four books have been, they're a quartet where there's themes that run through the books. I assume they continue in the fourth book. There's themes that run through the books, but the stories and the characters are different in each book. And each book centers around the season in which gives it its title. Now, so it began with Autumn, which a lot of it was set in the summer of 2016 and the immediate aftermath of the Brexit referendum, and then it moved into the autumn of that year. And it set the scene for, across the books, there's a lot of stuff about Brexit, about contemporary politics. There's a lot of stuff about the climate emergency, things like the refugee crisis, a lot of really interesting the way that the characters sort of think and talk about sort of the big contemporary issues. The second book, Winter, which was set across a few weeks in the winter, most of it was. And then the most recent one, Spring. Now, part of this is set in a spring, and part of it is set in an autumn. And the story too hops backwards and forwards between those two seasons. Probably best if I don't want to say too much about the plot, but if I just read the blurb, that gives you some idea what's going on. What unites Catherine Mansfield, Charlie Chaplin, Shakespeare, Rilke, Beethoven, Brexit, the present, the past, the north, the south, the east, the west, a man mourning lost times, a woman trapped in modern times, spring, the great connective. This is the impossible tale of an impossible time. So what's happening here is it's the two central characters, one of which is Richard, who's an aging film director who's at the start of the book, his longtime friend and collaborator has a terminal illness and then she dies. He is working on plans to produce a film, which the premise is that Catherine Mansfield, who's novelist and short story writer from New Zealand, and Rilke, who's a poet who I think was German, both lived in a small town in Switzerland at one point about 100 years ago, shortly before Catherine Mansfield died. And apparently they were unknown to each other. But the story is, the film is about the sort of the connections and coincidences of them and what would happen possibly if they did get to meet and know each other. The other main character is a lady called Brittany, who works in a detention centre for asylum seekers who the government are trying to deport. So there's a lot of stuff about the controversies around asylum seeking, the government's hostile environment, and I won't give too much of the story away. When you read it, there's quite a big, about 100 pages in, the book moves from part 1 to part 2, and there's quite a big jolt in the storyline. But then you realise that some of the little incidents that have been mentioned in the first part basically link into the second part, and then fair way into the second part, the two story from the first part and the second part join up really neatly, and then it unfolds really well. Throughout the series, Ali Smith, I've read, as well as these books, I've read several of her other books. She's a really brilliant storyteller, brilliant writer, lots of really great plays on word, puns. I've mentioned already that the story hops backwards and forwards, a lot of flashbacks. there's also quite a lot of factual stuff where characters are interested in particular artistic personalities or historical political events. So there's a lot of factual stuff that gets weaved into the fictional narrative, and the, also there's just occasionally there's just little passages. There's a lot of very short chapters. There's just a passage where someone's having a rant about social media or a social media rant, and it's all of the books are like puzzles where you have to, as the reader, sort of piece together what's happening. And it's quite interesting that one of the characters from the first book makes a minor appearance in the second book, and then in the third book, quite a long way into it, there is, although it's not told, you're not told this in the narrative, but if you remember the character, one of the main characters from the first book, there's quite a big connection between one of the main characters in the third book and the first book. So sorry, I'm saying too much again. All I would say, I'll drawing to a close, is that I do highly recommend these books. I think each of them are brilliant. Spring, I think, is probably my favourite. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. There's a lot of symbolism of sort of like new growth in spring and the weather getting better, the days getting longer, the sort of the positive feeling coming out of winter, going into spring. And the other thing to mention, which is quite striking, is there's a series of pictures by David Hockney that are used on the front cover, and it's basically the same setting in each season. So there's the autumn picture, like a country lane with some trees, and then in the winter it's the same setting but with snow on the ground. It's a very cold winter's day, and then spring you've got lots of new growth, whereas before you had sort of like the red leaves on the trees. Now you've got the green new growth. So that's a really nice connection across the series. So all in all, very highly recommended read. Great stuff. Probably haven't given it justice here, but hopefully if you're interested in what I said, or I mean if you've read any Alice Smith before, you'll know what to expect. These really are great stuff. So really of the same quality as How to Be Both and The Accidental, which I've read. Both brilliant books, especially How to Be Both. So thanks for listening, and I'll leave it there for tonight. Thanks. Goodbye.